December 24th, 1944. Somewhere in Belgium. Dear Sammy, I still see their faces, disbelief frozen in the snow, as our shells burst above them, erasing entire lines in seconds. The Germans came through those pine forests, thinking they knew what artillery could do. They'd survived barrages before, learned to dig in, learned to time the explosions and duck. But this time was different. This time, our shells didn't wait to hit the ground. They detonated in mid-air, right above their heads, turning the air itself into a killing field. And I watched through my field glasses as understanding came too late. Watched their expressions change from confidence to confusion to terror in the instant before the steel rain hit them. I'm writing this on Christmas Eve in a frozen foxhole somewhere in the Ardennes. And I need you to understand something before you make any decisions about your future. You wrote me saying you can't wait to turn 18, that you want to join the army and serve like your cousin Danny. But Sammy, what I'm about to tell you isn't the war you see in newsreels. It's not the clean victories or the noble sacrifice. It's something else entirely, something that's going to stay with me long after this war ends, assuming I make it that far. 3 days ago, I called in coordinates that killed hundreds of men in minutes. The new proximity fuses, the ones Captain Miller briefed us on, they worked exactly as promised, maybe too well. I did my job. I did it professionally, efficiently, by the book. And now I can't close my eyes without seeing those faces, without hearing the sudden silence after the shells stopped falling, without wondering if being good at killing makes you a soldier or just makes you a killer. My name is Second Lieutenant Daniel H.M., though everyone calls me Danny. I'm 22 years old, though I look younger. Baby-faced, Sergeant Thompson used to say before he died 3 days ago. I serve as a forward observer with the 2nd Infantry Division, 15th Field Artillery Battalion. That means I'm the guy who calls in the fire missions, who calculates the coordinates, who adjusts the targeting until the shells hit exactly where they need to. I'm from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and before the war I was a radio technician apprentice at Zimmerman's electrical shop on Market Street. You remember that place, Sammy? We used to spend hours there after school, old man Zimmerman showing us how circuits worked, how to diagnose a dead tube, how to coax a signal out of static. I enlisted because I knew my skills with circuits and electronics could serve the war effort. I couldn't stand the thought of not doing my part while other boys were dying overseas. The Army saw my technical background and sent me to artillery school, taught me how to read maps, calculate firing solutions, communicate with gun crews. Turns out calling in artillery isn't that different from tuning a radio. It's all about precision, about making small adjustments until everything aligns perfectly. The only difference is what happens when you get it right. I think about home constantly, Sammy. I think about our garage, Dad's old workshop where we spent so many afternoons tinkering with radios. Remember? The smell of solder heating up, that sharp chemical scent mixing with the burnt dust smell from heated wires. The crackle and pop of a homemade radio set picking up distant stations, WAR from New York, KDKA from Pittsburgh if the ionosphere was right. The taste of Mom's hot cocoa in those chipped ceramic mugs she'd bring out when it got cold. Too sweet the way she always made it, but perfect anyway. I can still see the glow of the radio tubes in the dim garage light, that warm amber illumination that meant the set was warming up, getting ready to pull voices out of the air like magic. I remember the cold metal of the radio chassis under my fingertips as we worked, the way your hands would get that grimy feeling from touching all the components, the sharp edges of tin where we'd cut the cabinet. You were 12 then. I was 17. You'd hand me tools and ask a million questions. Why does the capacitor go there? How does the antenna know which station to catch? Can we build one strong enough to hear London? And I'd try to explain about resonant frequencies and electromagnetic waves, probably doing a terrible job, but loving every minute of teaching you anyway. Those were the days when the biggest challenge was getting a clearer signal, when the worst thing that could happen was accidentally shorting out a transformer and having to explain to Dad why the circuit breaker kept tripping. When electricity was this fascinating puzzle to solve, not something that armed fuses and turned artillery shells into weapons more deadly than anything soldiers had ever seen before. That was before I understood what I was really learning. Before I knew that the same technical precision that lets you tune a radio to exactly 10-20 kilohertz would one day let you drop high explosive shells within 10 meters of a target coordinate. Before I realized that understanding circuits and electrical systems would make me the perfect person to work with the Army's newest weapon. The variable time or VT fuse, though we call them proximity fuses. Radio-based detonators that explode shells in the air when they sense they're close to the ground or a target. Technology so new, so secret, that we weren't allowed to use them where the Germans might capture one until this battle started. I'm 5'9", wiry build, wearing wireframe glasses that are constantly fogging up in this cold. I've got mud caked on my boots, my uniform, even in my hair. My hands are numb despite the gloves. Everything's numb when it's this cold. But I've still got Dad's old pocket watch in my breast pocket, ticking away steadily even when artillery fire shakes the ground. That watch and your last letter are the only pieces of home I'm carrying, and sometimes I pull them out just to remember that somewhere beyond these frozen forests, normal life still exists. December 19th, 1944. 05:30 hours. Someone kicked my boots. Lieutenant, Captain wants all FOs at the command post. Now. I was already awake. Nobody sleeps much when you know the Germans are out there in the dark, planning something. The whole front had been quiet for weeks, the kind of quiet that makes every soldier nervous because it means something's coming. I pulled myself out of my sleeping bag, breath fogging in the freezing air. The temperature had dropped below zero. Snow was piled 3 feet deep in places, more where the wind had drifted it against trees and vehicles. I put on my boots, leather frozen stiff, had to force my feet in, pulled on my parka, grabbed my map case and field glasses, checked that Dad's watch was still in my pocket. That watch had become a ritual, a talisman. As long as it kept ticking, I was still alive. Outside, the Belgian forest was silent, too silent, pine trees heavy with snow, fog hanging low between the trunks. Our artillery positions were dug in along the ridge, 6 105mm M2A1 howitzers spaced in a line, camouflaged with cut branches and canvas nets. The crews were already awake, breath steaming, standing around trying to stay warm. I could see them stamping their feet, hands shoved in pockets, looking miserable. Artillery crews have it tough, exposed positions, always a target for counter-battery fire, doing physical labor in conditions that would kill you if you stood still too long. The command post was a reinforced dugout with a canvas roof. I ducked inside. Captain Miller was there with the other forward observers, 4 of us assigned to different observation posts along the ridge. A map was spread on a wooden crate, marked with red and blue grease pencil, showing our positions and suspected German locations. "Gentlemen," Miller said without preamble, "intelligence says the Germans are massing for an offensive. Could hit us today, could be tomorrow, but it's coming. They've been moving units into the forest. We're talking division strength or better. Volksgrenadiers, possibly armor support. They want to break through here and push for Liège." He paused, looked at each of us. Miller was 35, regular army, had fought in North Africa and Sicily. He'd seen things we hadn't, survived battles we only heard about. When he looked worried, we paid attention. "You've all been briefed on the new fuses," he continued. "VT, variable time, proximity detonation. Each shell has a miniature radio transmitter in the nose. As it falls, it sends out a signal. When that signal bounces back, meaning the shell is about 20 to 30 feet from the ground, the fuse detonates the shell. Airburst, right above the target." He let that sink in. We'd heard about these fuses, but this would be our first time using them in combat. The implications were staggering. Normal artillery shells had to hit the ground or a target to explode. If you were in a foxhole or behind cover, you had decent chances of surviving. But shells exploding in the air showered steel fragments downward in a cone. There was no cover, no safety, just sudden death from above. "With these new fuses, boys," Miller said quietly, We'll change the way the enemy fears artillery forever. These shells don't need to hit anything. They just need to get close. That means every round is effective. That means we can stop massed infantry in ways we never could before. How many do we have? Someone asked. Enough. We've been stockpiling for weeks. Fire discipline is the same as always. Call your coordinates, adjust your targeting, make every shell count. But understand this. What you're about to see, what you're about to do, it's going to be different, more effective, more... He trailed off, searching for words. More devastating than anything you've done before. These fuses multiply our firepower by a factor of 5 or 6, maybe more. I felt something cold in my stomach that wasn't just the temperature. Multiply our firepower, make killing more efficient, turn artillery into something even more terrible than it already was. Questions? Miller asked. Sir, I said, adjusting my glasses. The Germans, do they know about these fuses? Intelligence says no. They've never seen them used. Which means surprise is on our side. He smiled grimly. They're going to come at us thinking they know what American artillery can do. They're going to be wrong. We filed out into the frozen morning. I walked to my observation post, a foxhole on the forward edge of the ridge, with good sight lines into the valley and forest below. Sergeant Thompson was already there, crouched behind the parapet with field glasses, scanning the tree line. Morning, Lieutenant, he said. Quiet out there. Too quiet. Harold Thompson, Des Moines, Iowa. 30 years old, wife and 2 kids back home, always humming swing tunes under his breath. Glenn Miller, Benny Goodman, Tommy Dorsey. He had this way of humming that made even the worst situations feel a little more bearable, like if he was calm enough to hum, things couldn't be that bad. Captain says they're coming today or tomorrow, I told him. Figures. Been feeling it in my bones. He handed me the field glasses. See anything? I scanned the valley. Snow-covered fields stretching to the forest edge half a mile away. Pine trees dark and dense. No movement, no smoke, no sign of thousands of German soldiers preparing to attack. But they were out there. We both knew it. Private Brooks climbed into the foxhole behind us, carrying a radio on his back. Leonard Brooks, Chicago, Illinois. 19 years old, youngest in our battery. Still had that high school kid look about him. He wrote letters home every single day without fail, hunched over his notepad every evening by lamplight, telling his mother about everything except the dangerous parts. Radio check, sir, he said. All guns reporting ready. Good. Stay alert. Long day ahead. Corporal O'Donnell appeared with rations and coffee. James O'Donnell, Boston, Massachusetts. 25. Loud. Never stopped talking. Could tell stories for hours about growing up in Dorchester, about the bars and the boxing matches and the girls he'd known. He was our comic relief, the guy who could make you laugh even when you were freezing and scared and wondering if today was the day you'd die. Coffee's terrible as always, he announced cheerfully. But it's hot, which is more than I can say for my feet. You know what I miss, Lieutenant? I miss the combat zone in Boston. You ever been? Little hole-in-the-wall joints serving drinks that'd peel paint? There was this one place, O'Malley's, right off Scully Square. Jimmy, Thompson interrupted, still humming. Save the stories. Gonna be a long day. Just trying to keep morale up, Sarge. But O'Donnell settled down, handed around the coffee, then disappeared back toward the gun positions. I checked my watch. 07:30 hours, still ticking steadily. I thought about you, Sammy, probably still asleep back in Harrisburg, warm in your bed, maybe dreaming about Christmas morning and presents under the tree. I thought about Mom making breakfast, Dad reading the paper, normal life continuing while we sat in frozen holes in Belgium, waiting for Germans to try to kill us. The day passed slowly. Nothing happened. We scanned the forest, checked equipment, tried to stay warm. Night fell early. It gets dark by 1600 hours this time of year, and still nothing, just cold and waiting. Maybe intelligence was wrong, Brooks said hopefully, around 2,000 hours. Maybe, I said, but I didn't believe it, and neither did he. December 20th, 1944. 05:30 hours. The Germans came out of the fog like ghosts. I was on watch, scanning the valley through field glasses in the pre-dawn darkness. Fog had rolled in overnight, thick and low, cutting visibility to maybe 200 yards. I was cold, exhausted, thinking about rotating out to catch a few hours of sleep. Then I saw movement. At first I thought my eyes were playing tricks, just shadows in the fog. But then I saw it clearly. Men. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Emerging from the tree line in the valley below, advancing in loose formation across the snow, gray uniforms blending with the fog. Moving quickly, quietly, weapons at the ready. "Thompson," I whispered urgently. "Wake up. They're here." He was awake instantly, years of combat reflex. Grabbed his glasses, looked. Jesus Christ. That's a lot of them. I grabbed the radio handset. "Fire Direction Center. This is Observer 3. Contact. Enemy infantry in valley. Grid coordinates." I read off the numbers from my map, hands shaking from adrenaline now instead of cold. "Estimate battalion strength or better. Advancing toward our position. Request fire mission. Over. Observer 3, roger. Stand by." Behind us, I heard the gun crew springing into action. Shouts, the clang of ammunition being prepped, the mechanical sounds of breech blocks opening, our 6 howitzers coming alive. I kept watching through the glasses. More Germans were emerging from the fog, a lot more. They were advancing in waves, using the fog for concealment, moving with the confidence of soldiers who'd done this before. They thought they had surprise. They thought the Americans were sleeping. "Fire mission ready," the radio crackled. "VT fuse is loaded. Request target coordinates and adjustment. Over." VT fuses, the proximity fuses. This was it. I rechecked my calculations, made sure the coordinates were precise. The Germans were about 800 yards out now, advancing steadily. In a few minutes they'd be in rifle range. We needed to stop them now. "Fire Direction Center, coordinates confirmed. Grid 427-815. Range 800. Will adjust. Fire for effect. Over." "Roger." "Rounds outgoing." I heard the guns fire, a rippling sequence of deep boom, boom, boom that shook the ground, 6 shells launching simultaneously. I counted seconds, watching the advancing Germans, waiting for the shells to arrive. Normal time of flight at this range was about 12 seconds. The Germans kept advancing. Some of them looked up. You could hear the shells coming, that distinctive whistle. But they didn't break stride. They'd been shelled before. They knew the routine. Hit the ground when you hear impact, wait for the explosions, get up and keep moving. Standard infantry tactics against artillery. But these weren't standard shells. The shells burst in the air, all 6 of them, simultaneously, about 30 feet above the German formation. Not waiting to hit ground, just detonating in midair right above them. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. Through my field glasses, I watched the scene unfold in horrible detail. The air above the Germans suddenly filled with steel fragments, thousands of pieces of shrapnel expanding outward and downward in overlapping cones. The fragments hit the snow first, kicking up a perfect circular pattern of white spray. Then they hit the men. The front rank of Germans, maybe 40 or 50 soldiers, just collapsed. All of them, simultaneously, like someone had cut their strings. They dropped into the snow and didn't move. Behind them, more men were hit, not killed but wounded, falling, clutching at wounds, screaming though I couldn't hear them at this distance. The perfect formation dissolved into chaos in seconds. And on the faces of the soldiers still standing, the ones at the rear who hadn't been hit, I saw something I'll never forget. Confusion. Complete bewilderment. They'd seen artillery before. They knew what it did. But this was different. This was shells that exploded where shells weren't supposed to explode. This was death from above with no warning, no impact, no chance to take cover. "Jesus," Thompson whispered beside me. "Jesus Christ." Observer 3, spotting report, the radio crackled. I forced myself to be professional. Fire Direction Center, direct hit on target. Estimate 50 casualties. Enemy formation disrupted. Recommend continue fire. Over. Roger, rounds outgoing. 6 more shells, 6 more airbursts. 6 more perfect cones of shrapnel raining down on men who were now trying to scatter, trying to run, trying to get back to the tree line. Some made it, most didn't. Keep firing, I heard myself saying into the radio. Target saturated, shifting fire to... I scanned for the next concentration of Germans. Found them. Another formation trying to advance from a different angle. Called in the coordinates. More shells, more airbursts, more men falling in the snow. This went on for 2 hours. Wave after wave of Germans tried to advance, and wave after wave we cut them down with proximity-fused artillery. They couldn't understand what was happening. They tried spreading out. We hit them anyway. They tried moving during the barrage. We hit them anyway. They tried everything soldiers had learned from years of combat against conventional artillery, and none of it worked because these shells didn't play by the old rules. By 0800 hours, the valley in front of our position looked like a slaughterhouse. The snow was red in places, black in others from explosions. Bodies lay everywhere, some in neat rows where they'd been advancing in formation, others scattered where they'd tried to flee. The few Germans still alive had retreated into the forest, and even they were getting hit by our fire. I lowered my field glasses. My hands were shaking, not from cold now, from something else. We stopped them, Thompson said quietly. He'd stopped humming. I realized I hadn't heard him hum once since the firing started. Yeah, I said. We stopped them. But I couldn't shake the image of those faces, the shock, the incomprehension, the moment when professional soldiers realized that everything they knew about combat had just changed, and realized it too late. I thought about our garage, Sammy, about building radios with you, about how excited we'd been to understand electromagnetic waves, to harness them for communication. I'd use that same knowledge to call in coordinates for weapons that turned radio waves into tools of death. The proximity fuses worked because of principles we'd learned together in that garage. Radio transmission, signal reflection, circuit design. I'd taken something beautiful and pure, the science of radio, and weaponized it. Lieutenant, Brooks said behind me. Captain wants a casualty estimate. I looked through the glasses again, tried to count bodies. Gave up. There were too many. Tell him at least 200 enemy KIA, I said. Probably more. Mission successful. Mission successful. That's what you say when you've killed hundreds of men before breakfast. When you've turned a valley into an abattoir using technology so new the enemy doesn't even know it exists. When you've done your job efficiently and professionally and by the book. Thompson started humming again. Something soft and sad I didn't recognize. I was glad he was humming. It meant we were still human. The Germans kept trying. Over the next 3 days, December 20th, 21, 22, they threw everything they had at Elsenborn Ridge. Infantry assaults, armor support, infiltration attempts, frontal attacks, flanking maneuvers. They needed to break through here. This ridge was a key position. If they took it, they could push toward Liège, maybe even make it to Antwerp like they were planning. So they kept attacking, kept dying, kept trying, and we kept killing them. The proximity fuses were devastatingly effective. Every fire mission resulted in massive casualties. The Germans tried adapting. They spread out their formations. They moved at night. They used smoke for concealment. Nothing worked. The fuses didn't care about tactics. They just detonated whenever they got close to the ground, and that meant every shell was lethal to anyone in the burst radius. I called in dozens of fire missions, maybe 100 shells with my coordinates. Each one killed or wounded multiple soldiers. I stopped trying to count the bodies in the valley, stopped trying to calculate how many men I'd personally killed. It was too much, too abstract, just numbers on a map, coordinates in a fire mission, professional execution of duties. But I couldn't stop seeing their faces through my field glasses. every time. The moment of comprehension when they realized what was happening. The moment when they understood that American artillery had changed, had become something more terrible than anything they'd faced before. December 21st, late afternoon. We were adjusting fire on a German infantry company trying to work around our left flank. I was in my foxhole with Thompson and Brooks, calling coordinates, watching through glasses as our shells found them. The usual terrible efficiency. Then I heard it. A different sound. Incoming. "Down!" Thompson screamed. German counter-battery fire. They'd finally zeroed in on our position. The first shell hit 50 yards to our right, in the forest. Explosion sent snow and dirt and tree fragments everywhere. Second shell hit 30 yards behind us. They were bracketing, finding our range. The next shell would be close. I grabbed the radio handset. "Fire direction center. We're taking counter-battery fire. Need immediate suppression." The third shell hit 20 feet from our foxhole. The explosion was immense. Not the sound, though it was deafening, but the pressure wave, like being punched by a giant invisible fist. The ground heaved, threw me against the back wall of the foxhole. Snow and dirt and shrapnel filled the air. Something hot grazed my arm. Fragment of steel, not big enough to penetrate, but enough to tear through fabric and burn. My glasses flew off. Everything went blurry. I heard Thompson screaming but couldn't understand words. Ears ringing so loud I couldn't hear anything else. Lungs burning from powder smoke and dust. I scrambled in the snow, found my glasses, put them back on. One lens was cracked, but at least I could see. Thompson was on the ground, not moving. For one terrible second I thought he was dead. Then he groaned, sat up, blood on his face from a cut on his forehead, but alive. Brooks was curled up in the corner of the foxhole, hands over his head, making a sound like a whimper. Alive. Scared shitless, but alive. "Everyone okay?" I managed to say. Voice sounded weird, distant, like I was underwater. "Think so," Thompson said. He touched his forehead, looked at the blood on his fingers. "Hal Thompson, luckiest son of a bitch in the army." "Where's—" I started to ask about O'Donnell, but then I saw him. He was in the ammunition dump 30 yards behind our position, or what was left of him. The fourth German shell had hit the dump directly, set off the stored ammunition, started a chain of explosions. There wasn't enough left of O'Donnell to identify except by his dog tags, which someone found later in the wreckage. James O'Donnell, Boston, Massachusetts, the storyteller, the comedian. The guy who never shut up, who could make you laugh no matter how bad things got. Gone in an instant. Mid-story, probably. He'd been heading back to the dump with more ammunition. No warning, no last words. Just there 1 second, obliterated the next. Thompson stopped humming that day, for good. I never heard him hum again. December 22nd. 1400 hours. Germans launched their biggest assault yet. We'd been reinforced. More artillery had arrived. More forward observers. More ammunition, including crates and crates of proximity-fused shells. The brass knew this was the critical point. If we held Elsenborn Ridge, the German offensive would stall. If we broke, they'd pour through. I was back in my foxhole. They'd rebuilt it after the counter-battery fire, moved it slightly, reinforced it with logs. New men had arrived to replace the dead and wounded. I didn't learn their names. Didn't want to. Easier that way. Through my field glasses, I watched the Germans form up in the forest. This time, they weren't hiding. This was everything they had. Infantry by the thousands, armor support, even some of the dreaded Tigers with their massive 88mm guns. They knew we were ready. They knew we'd slaughter them. They were coming anyway because they had no choice. Hitler's offensive demanded breakthrough at any cost. Observer 3, Fire Direction Center. All guns loaded with VT, ready to fire. Waiting your command. Over. I looked at the mass of German soldiers preparing to advance. Thought about Dad's watch ticking in my pocket. Thought about our garage and building radios with you. Thought about how I'd gotten here. How I'd gone from curious kid to professional killer in 3 years. Fire Direction Center, I said into the handset. Coordinates. I rattled off the numbers mechanically. Grid squares. range estimates, target descriptions reduced to technical specifications. Not men but targets, not soldiers with families but coordinates on a map. Roger, commence firing. The guns opened up all at once, not just our 6 howitzers but dozens more along the ridge. The sound was continuous thunder, shells streaking overhead in a metal storm. I watched them arc into the sky, descend toward the German formations. The airbursts began. It was like watching God's own wrath rain down. Shell after shell detonating above the Germans in perfect sequence, overlapping fields of shrapnel, no gaps, no safe zones. The entire valley floor became a killing zone. The German advance faltered, broke, scattered. Soldiers tried to retreat but couldn't. More shells fell behind them, cutting off escape. Armor tried to advance but got hit. Proximity fuses worked on vehicles too, shrapnel punching through hatches and vision slits and other weak points. It lasted for 2 hours, non-stop fire. The guns got so hot the crews had to pour water on the barrels. We went through hundreds of shells, maybe thousands. The valley filled with smoke so thick you couldn't see the ground anymore. When it finally cleared, when the guns fell silent and the last shells had fallen, the attack was over, completely destroyed. Thousands of German soldiers dead or wounded. The survivors were retreating into the forest in disarray. The offensive had broken against Elsenborn Ridge like a wave against rocks. We'd won. I should have felt triumph, relief, pride, something. But all I felt was hollow, empty, like something inside me had been used up, burned out, consumed by all that efficient killing. "Good shooting, Lieutenant," someone said behind me. One of the new guys. "Yeah," I managed to say. "Good shooting." But my hands were shaking and I couldn't stop them. That night, December 22nd, I tried to sleep. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those faces. The German soldiers in the valley, that moment of shock and comprehension. I saw O'Donnell laughing, mid-story, then just gone. I saw Thompson bleeding from his forehead, quiet because his humming had died with Jimmy. I saw Brooks writing letters to his mother, trying to tell her he was fine when we all knew tomorrow might be the day. I thought about technology, about proximity fuses and radio waves and electrical circuits, about how the same science that let us communicate across vast distances, that let us share music and news and human connection, how that same science could be weaponized, turned into tools of death so efficient they changed warfare itself. Captain Miller had said we'd change the way the enemy fears artillery. He was right. The Germans did fear us now. They feared us more than they'd feared anything before. We'd taken their experience, their training, their hard-won survival tactics and made them useless. We'd introduced something so devastating, so unstoppable, that they had no defense except to die or retreat. And I'd been part of it. I'd called in the coordinates, I'd adjusted the fire. I'd made it work with precision and efficiency. I'd used everything I'd learned, about radio, about electricity, about circuits and signals, and turned it into mass death. Was it victory? Yes, by any military standard. We'd held Elsenborn Ridge. We'd broken the German offensive. We'd killed thousands of enemy soldiers while taking relatively light casualties ourselves. By the cold calculus of war, we'd achieved everything we were supposed to achieve. But was it right? Was there any honor in it? Or was it just slaughter made efficient by technology? I didn't have answers. Still don't. December 23rd. Morning. Private Brooks was writing another letter home when the incoming shell hit. It was random. Random chance. Random trajectory. One German gun crew out there in the forest, firing harassment fire, not even aiming at anything specific. One shell among thousands fired during the battle. One piece of steel among millions that had torn through the air over Elsenborn Ridge. It hit our position directly, exploded inside the new foxhole they'd built for the radio operator. Brooks never knew what hit him. When we dug him out, he was still holding his pen. Still had his notepad with the letter half written. "Dear Ma," it started. Just wanted you to know I'm doing fine and thinking about you this Christmas season. Leonard Brooks, Chicago, Illinois, 19 years old. Wrote letters home every day without fail. Told his mother he was fine because what else could he tell her? Thompson and I stood there in the snow, looking at the body, and neither of us said anything. What was there to say? That it wasn't fair? That he was too young? That he'd survived 3 days of the most intense artillery combat of the war only to die from one random shell? Tell Ma I tried my best, Thompson said quietly. I looked at him. What? That's what he said when he was first hit, before he died. Tell Ma I tried my best. But Brooks had been killed instantly. He hadn't said anything. Thompson was confused, mixing up something else, some other death. Then I realized Thompson needed him to have said something. Needed there to be last words, some final message that made the death mean something. So he was giving Brooks the last words that should have been there, even if they weren't. I didn't correct him. Let him have that. We buried Brooks in a temporary grave behind the gun positions. Wrapped him in shelter half canvas because we didn't have any blankets to spare. Said a few words. Thompson tried to hum something. Tried and couldn't. Just stood there silent. Tears freezing on his face. December 24th. Christmas Eve. The Germans were quiet. The offensive had stalled. Elsenborn Ridge had held. We'd won. But it didn't feel like winning. I sat in my foxhole trying to write this letter. Trying to explain to you, Sammy, what I'd seen and done. Trying to warn you away from this. Trying to make you understand that the war in newsreels isn't the real war, that technology and progress and science can be twisted into horror, that efficiency in killing is still just killing. Sergeant Thompson sat next to me, cleaning his rifle, silent. He hadn't spoken much since Brooks died. None of us had. What was there to say? The guns were quiet for the first time in days. No fire missions, no incoming. Just snow falling softly in the forest, almost peaceful if you didn't look at the valley below where hundreds of bodies were frozen in the snow, where the evidence of our efficient slaughter was written in blood and steel. Dad's watch was still ticking in my pocket. Steady, reliable, unchanged by everything that had happened. I pulled it out, looked at the face. 1800 hours. Christmas Eve. Back home, you'd be getting ready for dinner. Mom would be cooking. Dad would be trying to fix the tree lights. You'd be sneaking cookies from the kitchen. Normal life. Beautiful, normal, peaceful life. I tried to remember what that felt like. Being excited about Christmas. Being innocent enough to think the world was a good place. Being young enough that the biggest problem was whether you'd get the present you wanted. I couldn't remember. That person was gone. 3 days of proximity fuses and efficient killing had burned him away. Lieutenant, Thompson said quietly, you think they'll attack again tomorrow, on Christmas? I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe. War doesn't stop for holidays. Would be nice, though. 1 day without killing. Yeah, would be nice. We sat in silence as darkness fell. Somewhere in the distance I heard singing. German voices carrying across the frozen valley. Stille Nacht, silent night. The same Christmas carol we sang, just in their language. Men we'd been killing for 3 days, singing about peace on earth. Thompson started humming along, just barely. So quiet I almost didn't hear it. But he was humming again. That had to mean something. That had to mean we were still human. Still capable of recognizing beauty and peace, even in the middle of horror. Or maybe it just meant we were trying to convince ourselves of that. Sammy, I need you to understand what I'm telling you here. The war you imagine, the one in the newsreels and the recruiting posters, it's a lie. Not because those things don't exist, but because they're incomplete. They show you the victories, but not the cost. They show you the triumph, but not what it does to your soul. I've killed hundreds of men in 3 days, maybe more. I don't know the exact number, and I don't want to know. I did it efficiently, professionally, using technology that made killing easier than it had ever been before. I was good at it. That's what haunts me, Sammy. I was good at it. All that precision I learned from building radios with you, all that technical knowledge, all that careful attention to detail, I used it to rain death on people who probably had their own cousins, their own versions of you waiting for them at home. The proximity fuses worked perfectly, better than anyone expected. They multiplied our firepower, made our artillery unstoppable, won us the battle. And I was part of that victory. I should be proud. That's what everyone keeps saying. Good job, Lieutenant. Outstanding shooting. You stopped them cold. But when I close my eyes, all I see are those faces. That moment of shock and incomprehension. The instant when professional soldiers realized the rules had changed and realized it too late. Was it necessary? Yes. The Germans had to be stopped. Hitler's offensive had to be broken. Elsenborn Ridge had to hold, or thousands more would have died. Americans and Allied soldiers who would have been overrun if we'd failed. Was it right? I don't know. I don't think I'll ever know. What I do know is that it changed me. The boy who left Harrisburg excited to use his technical skills. He's gone. In his place is someone who understands that technology is morally neutral, that science can be used for good or evil, that the same principles that bring people together can tear them apart if weaponized. I think about our garage all the time now. Not with nostalgia, but with something like grief. We were so innocent, Sammy. We thought understanding how radios worked was just about communication, just about pulling voices out of the air. We didn't understand that the same electromagnetic principles could be used to make weapons that killed with unprecedented efficiency. Or maybe we should have understood. Maybe it was always obvious that anything powerful enough to be useful could also be powerful enough to destroy. Maybe I just didn't want to see it. If I don't make it back, and the odds say eventually I won't, I need you to know some things. First, don't enlist. Please. Not because the cause isn't worthy, not because serving isn't honorable, but because I need someone in our family to stay whole. I need to know that you're home, safe, living the life I'm fighting to protect. I need you to keep that innocence we had in the garage, that curiosity about how things work, that excitement about discovery and learning. Don't let them take that from you the way they took it from me. Second, take care of Mom and Dad. Tell them I tried my best. Tell them I did my duty. Don't tell them about the proximity fuses, or the bodies in the valley, or the efficient slaughter. Let them believe I died doing something heroic if that makes it easier. Let them have that mercy. Third, if you do decide to pursue technical work, radio, electronics, engineering, whatever, please remember what I'm telling you. Technology isn't neutral. The things we build, the knowledge we gain, the power we develop, it can all be weaponized. Every discovery, every innovation, every breakthrough carries with it the potential for destruction as well as creation. That doesn't mean you shouldn't pursue it. The world needs people who understand how things work, who can build and create and improve. But go into it with your eyes open. Understand the responsibility that comes with knowledge. Understand that the same circuit that receives music can also detonate shells. That the same precision that tunes a radio can also call in artillery. That efficiency and effectiveness are tools that can be used for good or evil depending on the hands that wield them. Fourth, remember Thompson and Brooks and O'Donnell. Remember that they were real people, not statistics. Thompson hummed swing tunes and had a wife and kids in Iowa. Brooks wrote letters home every day trying to reassure his mother. O'Donnell told long rambling stories about Boston and made us laugh when we were scared. They're all gone now. Thompson is still alive, but something inside him died with the others. I heard it in his humming, in the silence where joy used to be. And me, I'm still breathing, but pieces of me are frozen in that valley along with all those German soldiers I killed. That's the real cost of war, Sammy. Not just the body count, but the souls damaged, the innocence lost, the parts of yourself you can never get back. I keep thinking about a conversation I had with Captain Miller after the fighting stopped on December 23rd. We were standing at the edge of the ridge, looking down at the valley where the Germans had attacked, where hundreds of bodies were scattered in the snow. "Hell of a thing, proximity fuses," he said. "They're going to change warfare forever. Make artillery more effective than anyone imagined." "Yes, sir," I said, because what else could I say? "You did good work, Mitchell. Your fire missions were textbook perfect. You probably saved hundreds of American lives by stopping those attacks so efficiently." "Thank you, sir." He was quiet for a moment then. "You want to know something? I've been fighting since North Africa, seen more combat than any man should, and I've never seen anything as devastating as what we did here with these fuses. Never seen men die that fast, that efficiently, with that little they could do about it." I waited. "It bothers me," he admitted quietly, "and I've been doing this for years. I can only imagine how it must feel for you. First real combat, and you're calling in fire missions that are more deadly than anything we've ever used before." "It's war, sir," I said. "We did what we had to do." "Yeah, we did." He looked at me. "But doing what you have to do doesn't mean it doesn't cost you something. Doesn't mean you don't carry it with you. And anyone who tells you otherwise is either lying or broken inside." He put his hand on my shoulder. "You did your job, Lieutenant. You did it well. But don't let anyone tell you that makes it easy. Don't let anyone tell you that efficiency in killing somehow makes killing acceptable. It doesn't. It just makes it necessary. There's a difference." That conversation has stuck with me. Because Miller was right. Necessity doesn't equal morality. Efficiency doesn't equal honor. We stopped the Germans at Elsenborn Ridge using weapons that made killing easier than ever before, and that was necessary. But it wasn't good. It wasn't clean. It wasn't something to be proud of. It was just the terrible thing we had to do to prevent something worse. So here I sit on Christmas Eve, 1944, in a frozen foxhole in Belgium, trying to write a letter that explains all this to my 15-year-old cousin who still thinks war is glorious. Trying to find words that can bridge the gap between innocence and experience, between the garage where we built radios and the valley where I used those same principles to kill hundreds of men. I don't know if I'm succeeding. I don't know if words can convey what I've seen and done. How do you explain the weight of efficient killing? How do you describe the moment when you realize you've become a weapon yourself, a component in a larger machine designed solely for destruction? How do you tell someone you love that the knowledge you shared with them, the afternoons spent tinkering and learning together, became the foundation for skills you used to end lives? I'm trying, Sammy. That's all I can do. Try to be honest. Try to warn you. Try to make you understand that the path from curious kid to efficient killer is shorter than you think, and that every step along that path costs you something you can never get back. The watch is still ticking. Dad's watch, steady and reliable, marking time whether I want it to or not. Each tick is another second survived. Each tick is another second carrying this weight. Each tick is a reminder that normal life still exists somewhere beyond these frozen forests, and maybe, if I'm lucky, if I survive, I'll make it back to that life someday. But I won't be the same person who left. That person died in this valley, along with Thompson's humming and Brooks's letters, and O'Donnell's stories and all those German soldiers whose faces I'll never forget. Someone else will come back wearing my name. Someone harder. Someone who understands too much about death and technology and the terrible efficiency of modern warfare. Someone who knows that progress isn't always forward, that innovation can mean destruction, that the same mind that builds can also destroy. I hope you can still love that person, Sammy. I hope Mom and Dad can, because I'm not sure I can love myself any. Tomorrow is Christmas. If the Germans stay quiet, maybe we'll get hot food. Maybe there'll be mail from home. Maybe for one day we can pretend that peace on Earth actually means something. Or maybe the Germans will attack again, and I'll call in more fire missions, and more men will die efficiently and professionally, because that's what war demands and what technology enables. Either way, I'll still be here. Still be carrying this weight. Still be trying to figure out how to live with what I've done. Still be remembering those faces. Thompson just brought me some coffee. Real coffee this time, not the terrible substitute. Someone scrounged it from somewhere. Small mercy on Christmas Eve. "Merry Christmas, Lieutenant," he said quietly. "Merry Christmas, Sarge." He started humming. Just barely. Silent Night. The same song the Germans were singing across the valley. A reminder that we're all human, all caught in this same terrible machinery, all trying to survive, and maybe find some shred of meaning in the horror. I'm going to mail this letter tomorrow if the mail gets through. I don't know when you'll receive it. Mail takes weeks sometimes, and if I get killed before then, maybe it won't arrive at all. But I need to send it. Need to try to reach across the distance between us and make you understand what I'm trying to say. Don't enlist, Sammy. Please. Live the life I can't live anymore. Keep the innocence I've lost. Stay in that garage and build radios and be excited about discovery without worrying about weaponization. Be everything I used to be before the war taught me that knowledge and power come with terrible responsibility. If I do make it back, and God, I hope I do, I won't be the cousin you remember. I'll be quieter, harder, more distant. I'll have nightmares. I'll flinch at loud noises. I'll stare at nothing for long periods, lost in memories of a frozen valley where proximity fuses turned men into statistics. Be patient with me. Understand that part of me stayed here in Belgium, frozen in the snow along with all the others who didn't make it. The best parts, probably. The innocence, the joy, the ability to be excited about technology without thinking about death. But I'll try to come back to you. Try to be family again. Try to find some piece of the boy who sat in the garage with you and thought radio waves were just about communication, not about killing. That's all I can promise. That I'll try. The sun is setting now. Christmas Eve in the Ardennes. The forest is beautiful in a terrible way. Snow-covered pines, icicles catching the last light. Everything peaceful and pristine if you don't look at the valley where the evidence of our efficient slaughter is written in frozen blood. I can hear singing again. Both sides this time. Germans across the valley, Americans in our positions. Silent night in 2 languages, 2 armies singing the same song about peace while surrounded by the machinery of war. Maybe that's what hope looks like in a war. Not peace itself, but the memory of peace. Not the end of killing, but the recognition that we're all human, all caught in something bigger than ourselves. All trying to hold on to whatever scraps of humanity we can find in the midst of horror. Or maybe I'm just trying to make meaning where there isn't any. Maybe war is just war, killing and dying and efficiency and terror, and any meaning we find is just something we impose on it to make it bearable. I don't know anymore. I'm too tired to know, too changed to see clearly. All I know is that I love you, Sammy. I love Mom and Dad. I love the life we had before all this. The afternoons in the garage, the innocent excitement about how things work. I love all of it with a fierce desperation, because I'm afraid I'm losing the ability to love anything, afraid that the efficient killer I've become is burning away the person I used to be. So I'm writing this letter as a lifeline, as a connection to that past, as a reminder to both of us that I was once someone else, someone better, someone who didn't carry the weight of hundreds of dead men on his conscience. Hold on to that person for me, Sammy. Remember him. Keep him alive in your memory. Because I'm having trouble remembering him myself. The guns are quiet. The forest is still. Christmas Eve in a frozen war. Tomorrow we might fight again. Tomorrow I might call in more fire missions, kill more men efficiently and professionally using technology that makes death easier than ever before. Tomorrow I might die myself. Random shell, random bullet, random chance like what killed Brooks. Or tomorrow might be peaceful. A day without killing. A Christmas miracle in the middle of war. I don't know which I'm hoping for. Peace would be good. But peace also means time to think, time to remember, time to process what we've done. Sometimes the killing is easier because it doesn't give you time to feel. That's what war does to you. Makes you afraid of peace because peace means confronting what you've become. Dad's watch is ticking, steady, reliable. Each second another moment survived, another moment carrying this weight, another tick toward whatever future waits for me if I'm lucky enough to have one. I pray you never hear this ticking the way I do, Sammy. Never carry this watch into combat. Never use your knowledge of circuits and radios to call in death from above. Never learn what it feels like to be efficient at killing. Stay home. Stay innocent. Stay whole. That's my Christmas wish. My prayer. My final request. Your cousin always, Danny 2nd Lieutenant, Daniel H. Mitchell, U.S. Army, 2nd Infantry Division, 15th Field Artillery Battalion, somewhere in Belgium, December 24th, 1944. If anyone else reads this someday, understand that the proximity fuse was one of the greatest technological achievements of the war. It multiplied artillery effectiveness by factors of 5 or 6. It saved countless American lives by stopping enemy attacks more efficiently than ever before possible. From a military standpoint, it was a triumph. But for the men who used it, for the forward observers who called in the fire missions, for the gun crews who loaded the shells, for anyone who saw what these weapons could do, it was also a burden, a moral weight. A reminder that technological progress isn't always forward, that making killing easier doesn't make it better. We won the Battle of the Bulge partly because of these fuses. We held Elsenborn Ridge and broke Hitler's offensive and saved thousands of lives. That matters. That's real. That's true. But it cost us something too. Cost us pieces of our souls. Cost us the ability to be innocent about technology and progress and science. Cost us the comfortable illusion that efficiency and morality are somehow connected. They're not. Efficiency is just efficiency. Morality is something separate, something that has to be chosen and maintained and fought for even when, especially when, efficiency makes the immoral choice easier. Remember that. When you read about proximity fuses in history books, when you learn about the Battle of the Bulge, when you study the technology that helped win the war, remember that behind those technological achievements were men who paid a price for that efficiency. Men like Thompson who stopped humming. Men like Brooks who died writing letters home. Men like O'Donnell who never finished his stories. Men like me who learned that the knowledge we'd gained in garages and workshops could be weaponized, turned into tools of death so effective they changed warfare itself. We did our duty. We did it well. We won. But winning doesn't mean it didn't cost us everything. Danny Mitchell survived the Battle of the Bulge. He returned to Harrisburg in 1946, but never again set foot in that garage where he used to build radios with his cousin Sammy. He never touched circuits again. He never wanted to understand how electromagnetic waves worked, because now he knew too much about what they could do. Sammy never enlisted. He honored his cousin's request. He became a physics teacher, guiding generations of young people in technology, always with Danny's warning echoing through his lessons. Knowledge without moral responsibility is just power waiting to be weaponized. The proximity fuses Danny helped employ at Elsenborn Ridge saved thousands of American lives. They changed the war. They changed history. But they also changed the men who used them, in ways no technical manual could ever predict. If this letter moved you, if the story of Danny Mitchell and the men of Elsenborn Ridge deserves to be remembered, subscribe to this channel and leave a like. Every subscription helps us rescue more voices like this, voices that cannot be left to die in the silence of history. There are thousands of letters still untold, thousands of men like Danny, Thompson, Brooks, and O'Donnell, whose stories deserve to be heard. Your support keeps these memories alive. Subscribe. Leave a like. Share with someone who needs to hear this. And if you knew a veteran, if someone in your family served, leave their name in the comments. Let's honor them together. Let's make sure their voices never fade away. Their voices, our mission, never forget.